You ready? You ready? Here we go. I'm going to spin the wheel of topics for the live stream. Hello, if you're watching. We are just hanging out here on a Tuesday because we're not doing LEP today, and so we're just hanging out with everybody. We have a Jitsi room open and our Mumble room is open if you'd like to hang out in the on-air channel with us. And Takalak, like the orange one, he's just joined the Mumble room. Hello, the orange one. How are you?
Hello.
Hello.
So orange today. It's lovely.
Yes. So we're going to spin the wheel of topics, and it is open to discussion for everyone. Here we go. And the winner is dun, 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 the Ubuntu Web remix. What is this?
Well, we got a piece of feedback, I think it was 2 weeks ago, someone saying, hey, have you guys heard about this? Have you played with it? Do you know what's going on with it? As far as I understand, there's a bunch of sort of websites.
Web remix, yes. Sorry, there's a typo in there. Web remix. Yes, I am familiar with this a little bit.
And I just know it slightly and have dabbled in reading sort of the headlines on it, but I think it would be interesting to dive in and see what it's all about. It sounds like there's a small niche of people that are really getting around it. I know there's some websites that are trying to tie into this too, but that's the end basically of my knowledge in it.
Yeah, so it's got kind of a fancy look to it. It's I'm trying to find the name of the person who created it. But it's kind of, you could think of it as like an alternative to Chrome OS, I suppose. Here, I think I have a screen cap so I can put it up on the, yeah, there we go. So this is a 9 to 5 Linux article here. And you can kind of see it's got some serious kind of, it's like, I guess it's GNOME. It looks like GNOME Shell to me.
From what I understand, the underpinning is a bunch of web apps, right?
Seems so, yeah. Seems that's their deal.
But they're sort of, as far as I understand, optimized to be used in this way.
I could definitely see it being appealing on a Chrome OS style machine. You know what I mean? I could see that. I was just looking at their they got a pretty simple website. Check this out. If it's at ubuntu-web.org, and this is it. That's it.
And this is like certified canonical stuff, right?
I don't know about that. No, I don't think so.
Well, would they let them use the name?
Well, let's see. Would you want to be the company that goes around playing whack-a-mole with?
But haven't they done that in the past? I thought.
I think they're hoping. So like, basically, I think the way it kind of, I don't know for sure, but I think unofficially the way it kind of works is if you're working towards becoming an official flavor, I don't think they're going to raise a stink about it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But if you're out there popping off and, you know, calling Shuttleworth a bully or something like that, well, then they might have a problem with it. So here's a little video of their, it's like Micros. Look, they got a little button there to install the Office 365. You know?
It's funny they show that first.
Well, it does make a point, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
It does make a point. And then I guess they must add it to the launcher, eh? Yeah, so now there it is in the launcher, which is slightly cut off on the stream version. Yeah, it's zoomed. I actually think that's a pretty good demo, really. I don't really, for me personally, want this.
Well, what's the use case here?
Well,
low operating devices, like low spec devices.
Yeah, or even older laptops. I mean, if you think in terms of like Hadia's, my wife's workload, web apps are probably 90% of what she does use.
Right.
So for people that maybe do that, yeah, I hate web apps. So I minimize my usage as much as possible. Yeah. I don't know, but I think it's a great project for that kind of use case, and it's probably more users like that than like you or I.
Right. But I thought at least it would be interesting to know it exists, wrap our head around a little bit, and maybe have a look every 6 months, see what they're doing.
Yeah, we should definitely check in. So Sab's asking in the chat room if we have any thoughts on a product manager and hiring a gaming product manager. I think it's a really interesting sign from Canonical.
Yeah, we did talk about it briefly, I think, in the pre-show. Was it the pre-show of last Linux Unplugged on Sunday?
Yeah.
And we've been talking about it since a little bit. And I don't know. I wonder if it's like The description itself seems a little bit like it's written by two different departments.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if it's a small pilot project that they're doing to try to maybe...
My first reaction was like an OEM partner probably wants to ship a gaming laptop or something.
That would make sense, but how long would they be willing to wait for Canonical to put their stuff together?
They will wait sometimes. Hello, Minimac. No, we're not recording. We were just sort of, since we're live,
we're just riffing.
We went in the on-air channel, but...
Yeah, can we join?
Yeah,
the other ones that are in the lobby?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So we will.
All right.
Oh, do they usually sit in the lobby then?
Yeah, for the upload.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi. So, Brent made us a wheel of topics we were just kind of going through and talking about, like a Wheel of Fortune style, Price is Right style wheel that you spin.
And you can send in your suggestions for other things to add to the wheel, for sure.
Does anybody want to add that's a great idea. Anybody have a suggestion for the Wheel of Topics? We should have put the gaming one on there.
Oh, I heard a bling. What was that?
That's somebody in the thing. That's always...
Got it.
Whenever there's a sound, it's always Jitsi. That you can count on, for sure. All right, so anybody in the chat room or anybody in the mumble room have a topic? Let's add it to the wheel.
Yeah, I had my first experience with Pipewire now. I just added Pipewire to my Ubuntu installations, and all in all, I'm really happy. And as others suggested, when it comes to Bluetooth connections with headsets, Pipewire is a huge improvement. You can't imagine. It's really good. Sound quality is better, and connection problems are gone. So really good, really good.
I think that right there is the reason it did so well in the Tuxies. Is a lot of people are doing virtual meetings now, and my co-host Mike from Coda Radio had a sales call where and he's using Pulse Audio, and it disconnected his Bluetooth headset in the middle of the sales call, and he's like, "That's it. I'm not using this ever again. I will only use the Mac for my sales calls now."
That's very embarrassing, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there is one thing. So if I go to Kodi, I have somehow wonky sound. So
well, it might just be Kodi.
Not that it is unstable, but it is like whoa. It's really wonky for some reason. I don't know if it is the PVR plugin I use or didn't have extensive testing now with movies I have on Kodi because I was at the second residence. I will do some tests here, but that's the only major flaw I see because Kodi is a software that I use daily here. And if I have that problem also here on my laptop, I will stay on Pulse Audio, in fact.
So here's what I've done is I've added things that Linux does great and things that Linux sucks at to the topic.
Ooh, I like this. Topic. Yes.
So we'll have to talk about
this. Is like the daily conversation around here.
Yeah. You got any other suggestions? Any other suggest I?
I haven't.
Now he's gone.
I haven't tried. I haven't tried Pipewire yet, and I wonder, for those listening and myself included, what would be the easiest way to kind of jump in and play with it without necessarily committing?
Fedora.
Of course, I should.
What I can tell you, if you have Ubuntu LTSs or even recent Ubuntu's, there is some 3-step procedure where you can, in fact, install Pipewire along with Pulse Audio. And then it's like nice. 2-3 command where you can switch back to Pulse Audio. It's basically you install the components and then you turn off Pulse Audio with systemctl and mask the Pulse Audio driver. And then you enable and load the Pipewire driver, and that's all. So you can switch with 3 commands and then you're back.
It sounds like you could even just script that into an on-off button.
Oh, sure.
Basically, yes. But the thing is that you have system components that are loaded during boot, and then you have user sessions. So it could be that you have to log in, log out to make the Pipewire session or the Pulse Audio session working. I don't know if just Pulse Audio-K does work, or if there is something similar for Pipewire.
Pulse-K is one of the best ways for me to get a Barry White going on.
So I managed to get the video feed piped into the Jitsi room, so that's cool.
I'm fascinated by how it's backwards for us.
Yeah, you know why? Is because people are so used to looking in mirrors.
Oh, yeah.
It throws them off.
It's the selfie look.
So they flip it around so
Got
that
it.
way our little human brains can deal with it. But when you're displaying text, it sure is strange for us. But yeah, so if you go in the Jitsi room, you can hang out there too if we're having problems with Mumble again. And I'll have the video feed. So we've got, I was just putting the wheel of topics up. Should I give it a spin?
Yeah, I think you should. Go for it.
All right, here we go. Let's see what we're going to talk about. The wheel of topics. Feel free to submit one. Giving it a spin now. All right, and we have landed on things Linux does great. And I'll now remove that from the list of possibilities, and we'll spin it again here in a moment. But things Linux does great. You want to start? I got a few. I have
a trolley answer for you.
All right, what is it?
Combined use lots of power around the world.
Oh, all the cloud servers.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we better ban that Linux.
Right.
It's using too much power. You know, I still to this day just love that you can pick a Linux where you can have something that's just super quick to install, or you can have something that lets you define if a firewall launches and if you have SSH, and you have all these kind of little configuration options you can do. And I find that nice because I do want to set all those things. And I like that there's distributions that give me that choice. So I think we do really well at that. And then the other thing I think we're particularly good at, and in fact, I think we're way better than any of the commercial operating systems at, is we are willing to revisit plumbing and rewrite it. Like Systemd, like FirewallD, like Pipewire, like Wayland, like all the new back-end compositor stuff that the different projects are having to write to support Wayland. Like, we're willing to plumb that stuff again and retredge, where Windows just builds on top of legacy code in that NT code base and layers and layers and layers and layers over it and builds simultaneous subsystems and all kinds of just crazy wonky-ass legacy spaghetti code. And while we're not immune from it, I think we're way better about addressing that than Windows and also than macOS.
I think that might be a subtle weakness, only in that it's up to us to stay current all the time.
Sure.
So I wonder if there's a lifelong...
If you're an AWS customer or you're consuming RHEL and deploying it every 5, 6, 7 years, it's not that bad.
Right.
It's more like if you're sitting in the position where we're at.
Yeah, I suppose we have a unique kind of outlook on this stuff.
Strap in. Anybody in the Mumble Room have something that Linux is better at than all the other platforms?
Running
I would,
Well, yeah. No kidding, right?
yeah, I would throw in as a user updates, upgrades, and migration procedures.
Right.
I mean, we are really strong with that. I mean, I just migrated a system and I can have a package lists and my repository keys, copy them over, and then do an installation procedure. And in like 5 minutes, I find myself with the same system I have on the other side, just with a few commands. And
I need to learn
upgrade
that.
procedures, normally the same. So also keeping your system clean. I mean,
Yeah.
DNF
Since
and
2000.
apt are really cool now with auto removing packages that are not needed anymore and everything. So to maintain a system when it comes to packages and software, I mean, we are far better than at least Windows. I have no clue for Macs, but
I feel like it's better. I feel like, I have this Neon install that's like from 2018, and it runs just as good as it did the day I installed it. And same with my Archbox upstairs. It's from like 2018, 2017. And I don't feel like it has like registry creep or anything like that. It still runs really good. Also, Minimac, just kind of doubling down on what you said from like a desktop standpoint. I know I mentioned this just recently, but when you boot up Windows or Mac, if you haven't used it for like a week plus, man, you just get slammed with all these background processes that are like checking for X and updating Y and indexing this. And it's just like a shit show on your machine, especially the Mac. Like the Mac has gotten really bad about this because there's cloud photo stuff they got to do and all, it's just gotten really bad. On Linux, like worst case, you boot up a desktop that you haven't used in a week plus, and for 45 seconds, it's going to update the package cache.
I disagree.
Yeah.
I've recently run into a bunch of times when, so I have pretty bad internet from modern standards at my place. So I notice these things. It's sort of like when
Are
you're in
you
the
implying
RV.
that I don't?
Well, I'm implying that sometimes when I'm in the RV with you, we don't. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there are times, but yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
And so I've noticed a trend towards the same thing that Mac and Windows are doing. So if you look at unattended package upgrades, those are enabled by default. And they just
you're
kinda
using
happen in the
snaps.
yeah. No, not only on snaps. Apt as well has unattended stuff going on. At least on Ubuntu.
Yeah, but
Not on any of my systems.
that is combined with the software manager package, and you can
Right.
disable that.
Yeah, I know you can
and
disable it,
just do
but I'm
the update.
suggesting
Yeah.
that it's
But I
a
would say beyond
default.
that. But I would say beyond that, though, I guess I still consider that not even really comparable, because the difference there, right, is it's like a unified update mechanism versus every app you've ever installed has its own built-in updater.
Fair enough.
And that's just madness, because there's no coordination. Like, they're all competing for resources at the same time.
right.
So you're right. You do have more automatic updates, especially with snaps. And snaps is a separate process. But like, say you're on the Flatpak GNOME software train, right? That's all just getting updated by GNOME software or the command line. That seems better to me. You could update Flatpak separately and stuff, but you're right. We do have more, especially with snaps and Flatpaks, more automatic updates. But I don't have any of my systems auto update just because of bandwidth. I have to turn all that off.
What I can tell you, I have a dual boot system on my laptop where from like every month or so I boot up Windows 10. And there I have my hard drive spinning without acceleration for like 20 or 30 minutes. And I'm doing nothing. I'm just watching the blinking LED of my hard drive spinning.
Yeah.
And I have no clue. I have no clue what that thing is doing because I have no information at all. I have nothing. It's just spinning and just blinking. And even though if you have the automatic, the unattended upgrade running on Ubuntu, that takes like 5 minutes, and then you get that pop-up windows. We have these updates, and then it does the updates, and then after, let's say 10 minutes, you're done. And then your system runs cool again, and your van is not vanning like hell. And so we are much better when it comes to that.
One of my most frustrating experiences that happens regularly, unless, you turn it off, is, you're in the middle. Okay, you're setting up for a show, Chris. You're doing all this research, it's like 2 hours before, you're putting all the things together, you're just in a flow and you're setting everything up.
Sure.
And all of a sudden Firefox says, oh, we can't load the pages anymore. You have to just reboot to apply all of the updates we did in the background.
That's a thing.
It's a thing.
Oh my God.
I've run into that on a few systems now, and it drives me insane because I'm the kind of person who just hyper focuses. So if it takes me a bit to get into something, but once I'm in there, I could spend hours and I forget to eat and
you
stuff.
also have to off ramp.
Yeah. But then it's like this, bam, no more sort of creativity.
Where it happened. That's what happened to me this morning.
Oh, it's the worst.
I didn't get an off ramp. I'm just
so
like,
you know
boom,
what I'm
boom,
talking about
boom,
then,
boom,
right?
What? No, I'm in the flow. I'm in the flow.
No.
Yeah, no, I totally. Wow, I gotta say, I have not hit that with Firefox, but I can understand why, because it's doing like some sort of update thing, and but
why can't they just let the
what the worst case you get with Chrome is it just gives you a little badge that says you need to restart the browser to get the update, but you don't have to restart.
That is better. I would want it to suggest that and not make it so that my browser that I tend to have like 100 tabs
Is it not
open.
getting updated through apt? Is it updating?
Well, I wonder if it's updating the, and someone might know this more than I do, but I wonder if it's updating all of the extensions.
Oh.
And because those have updated, they're kind of in this funny state now that, when you load a new page, they're reaching to all the extensions like ad
Isn't that
blockers
something
and
else
stuff.
too?
So
Like you can have applications that are doing self-updates in their components.
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
It's
right.
getting a little out of hand.
It is.
And so you can turn that off. You go about config, you can turn it off, but the default is
Can we
to be
just
on.
mention this is another great reason why it's nice not to have all of your damn applications in a web browser?
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Not to mention the overhead and CPU usage and memory usage and stuff.
Okay, so last call. Does anybody have a something Linux is great at compared to the other OSs before we spin the wheel again?
I think modularity.
How did that not come up?
I feel like
that's what's made it such a success, like in the marketplace, is you can use that's like a huge aspect.
It seems maybe
low end
obvious.
hardware for sure.
What was that one?
Lower end.
Sorry, lower end hardware.
Oh, yeah,
that's what all
sure.
my stuff is.
Sure. Yeah, right. It is great for breathing life.
Just look at the Pi. Has anyone tried to run Windows on a Pi?
Well, nobody does it, right? Because it's so awful.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
If I can say something, it's great for music.
All right. I think it's great for podcast production, so I'll get behind that.
You mean for music production?
Yeah, for music production. Because I've got I'm using Ubuntu and running Bitwig and a host of other applications, and through the jack through this jack subsystem for audio, they all work nicely together.
Yeah. Yeah. What we can do with jack in our mixer is unbelievable.
It's nice.
It's like this mixer is just an extension of our Linux box. It's incredible. And if this mixer were ever die, I'd just buy another one, even though it's years old now. I just buy an exact replacement because it's wild that I can route the audio in and outs in the mixer using jack. I can wire my mixer using jack, and then the fact that Reaper also natively speaks jack.
So nice.
Any of the inputs and outputs we create in jack show up as audio inputs and outputs in Reaper. It's just you couldn't even do it on other OS.
It's what you were wishing about.
Yeah, you just couldn't even do it on a Mac or on Windows.
Did you have this mixer before?
Talking about mixers, I find that the mixer of Ardour.
Oh yeah, okay.
Is best.
I bet. I've heard it's really great for music. Yeah, I've never really given it a proper spin, but I should. All right, you know what time it is then. We have the Behringer X32, but Behringer makes a whole line. So if you don't need something as big as the X32, you could, they have a 12, an 8, I think, which just is the amount of inputs. All right, let's spin the wheel. Oh, almost went to Brent's Docker.
Right.
But we have Qubes OS.
So this originated from another piece of feedback that we got saying, hey, I think it might be really interesting to dive into cubes. And I, many years ago, read about cubes and the Callies and stuff when I was getting interested in that. And I sort of forget what it does. So can anybody refresh me on that?
I'll give you a super high level. I mean, because I've used it like a grand total of twice. So
that's more than me.
I'm no expert. But it is designed for the very super security paranoid to isolate different applications and aspects of your desktop into their own dedicated VMs. And then Qubes tries to make that all usable. So like Firefox would have its own VM. And just total machine isolation so you don't have to worry about people stealing your datas. We should go look at what their description is on their website. I don't know. Is anybody in the Mumble room giving Qubes a proper, or Jitsi giving Qubes a proper?
You should show that to the Jitsi room there.
What's that? This?
Yeah, the Qubes site.
Sure. Edward Snowden says, if you're serious about security, QubesOS is the best OS available today. It's what I use.
Does he really? I want to go ask him.
They're using Zen underneath, Fedora, Debian, or Windows. I don't know about Windows. Oh yeah, Windows VM. Sure.
Didn't he say that about Tails?
Yeah, he may have changed his opinion.
Maybe he uses both. All right, so what is QubesOS? Well, there's the diagram for you, Brent.
Oh, it's nice and simple.
So you got an admin VM, you got your GUI VM, and then you got your template VMs to launch different like built-in distro options or applications. QubesOS is a free open source security-oriented operating system for a single-user desktop. It leverages the Zen-based virtualization to allow for the creation and management of isolated compartments called cubes. So that's where the name comes from.
Got it.
Yeah. Cubes, which are implemented as virtual machines, have specific purposes, like a predefined set of one of many isolated applications for like personal use or project use. Maybe you need a specific network stack, something like that. It has what it calls natures. I don't know about that. A full-fledged, stripped-down virtual machine. Levels of trust from complete to non-existent in terms of trust. All the windows from the applications or from the VMs are displayed in a unified desktop environment with an unforgeable color-coded window border, so the different security levels are easily identifiable.
Oh, that's kind of nice, though.
That is nice.
Yeah.
So this is a dangerous one. And then they have down here at the bottom of the diagram, they have the different colors of trust.
And so I wonder if there are default levels of trust that Qubes defines on these apps.
For
and
some
if
of these,
you,
yeah, I
for
bet.
some reason, trust it more or less, you can modify that default.
I mean, imagine if you're like a Bitcoin billionaire, right? You're probably going to be pretty careful every time you open up that wallet.
Have you heard of Split GPG? Utilizes Split GPG to keep your private keys safe.
Yeah, huh?
Is it like a...
Split GPG.
I wonder if it's a GPG wallet of sorts.
Don't know. Let's go look. Split GPG implements a concept similar to having a smart card with your private GPG keys. Oh, that's cool. So it's like something you know, something you have kind of thing.
It reminds me of those little devices. You have one upstairs in the closet, kind of buried in there, I think.
The YubiKey kind of
thing?
thing?
Yeah, the YubiKeys.
Yeah,
That's what I was
yeah.
trying to think of. This is software-based, I take it?
Yeah, I guess so, huh? Yeah, that's
Very
interesting. So it says here that the idea is that one not so trusted domain, like for example, one where Thunderbird is running, can delegate all of its crypto operations, such as decryption or encryption and signing, to another more trusted network isolated domain. Are you following this?
Trying.
So Thunderbird, which is probably a risky app, right?
Because it connects to a bunch of different places.
And you're downloading emails that could contain malicious URLs or whatever like that, right? So Thunderbird's in your work email VM. Then when you go to use it to do a GPG operation, like say sign an email, which I wish we all did as a matter of practice, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
It will use this split GPG system to actually conduct the signing and cryptographic operations in a separate VM that is more isolated and more trusted.
Which from the color, I could tell is trusted. They've even color-coded the little diagram there.
That is nice. That is nice.
Cool.
I mean, that is really slick. You got to admit, that's a pretty clever solution to that.
It sounds well thought out.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I'm getting interested in wondering how this might be to run like...
I mean, this seems like your speed, to be honest with you.
Okay, when I'm traveling, I just kind of like...
Right.
Have a USB key and I run this.
Huh. Yeah, especially if you can get like a fast one. Fast USB key.
Has anyone tried this?
See, I think it's too much work. I think people worry it's too much work.
But what they're attempting to do is to make it built in and kind of work out of the box, right? That's the whole idea. You could build this yourself, I imagine, but that would be an undertaking.
I mean, it's an amazing piece of engineering, but I think you have to be as smart as Edward Snowden to really run it correctly.
So I'll be just fine, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I wonder if Silverblue is a better middle ground, maybe. I don't know. Minimac asked a good question, and that is, how do the app updates work? Like, do you update a whole VM to get Thunderbird up to date? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that was my thing, because you talked about, Brent talked about Firefox updating itself, which is a security problem.
Sure is.
So are these VMs read-only? So if you put that up, do you know that the applications that no one can change, in fact, that VM, and you only have a part of your home directory where you have all your data, or how does that work?
I guess if you got really nitty-gritty, you could have almost like firewalls in each VM that only let through trusted domains.
This seems like an
updates and
opportunity
things.
for you to try this and let us know,
Oh, I
'cause
see.
I'm just saying. I'd like to know these
Because
things.
I remember when it comes to security, in the early Linux days, we said, burn yourself a Knoppix CD-ROM and boot that one over.
Yeah,
and
right.
like
I've done
that,
that.
you know that there is no access to the applications. Nothing can be
true.
changed on the operating system.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, the good old days of Knoppix.
You're gonna use QuickMU right now to launch a Qubes VM and just try it out, right?
Right. How deep down can we go, right?
Anyways, that's a topic that I think is worth maybe
It could be.
playing with. It's maybe more on the technical, fun side of things and less on the useful everyday side of things. But I think worth
It would
keeping
be
our thumb
interesting.
on.
Brent visits QubesOS land, and we find out
Should I go to Quebec to visit Qubes?
from Quebec. No, you didn't have to do that, Brent. No,
but I'm in Quebec City.
all right. You know what? Oh, you know what that music means.
Wait, before spinning, do we have any other suggestions?
Oh, yeah. Anything else we should add to the wheel?
We can't let the wheel get empty.
Well, we could. Then the stream's done. You know, like when we run out.
So there's incentive. The more you suggest, the longer we're on.
Yeah, if you got an idea for the wheel, for a topic for us to discuss, could be about anything, I suppose.
Yeah.
Chris's Ansible adventure.
There's nothing there to talk about yet.
And we're done.
Yeah, there it is. Although hopefully there will be one day. All right, we're gonna spin it, but you can drop a suggestion in the chat room or from Mumble or Jitsi. Here we go. Here we go. Oh. Uh-oh. Oh,
This
no.
is the deep dive.
Oh, no. Okay,
Here we
Bitcoin node setup. So, let's see. Jeez,
Give us the
I'm
background.
deleting this one off this.
Right?
So you can run your own Bitcoin node. What that is basically it's like a transaction processor, and you can have. It's a great way to kind of bypass having to pay heavy fees, but it also helps decentralize the Bitcoin network. But what I was coming across recently is a really neat open source project called Umbrel, and Umbrel, which is Git Umbrel, which is spelled GETUMBREL.com. So am I saying that right? Probably. It is both a personal server deployment platform and a self-hosted Bitcoin wallet and Bitcoin node. So one of the things you can do is you install it. They distribute it as either a Raspberry Pi image or a setup script that is pretty much really only usable on Ubuntu or Debian. But when you get it set up, which is pretty easy and pretty quick, it creates a Docker environment that is using Nginx to do proxying. And then inside that Docker environment, there's the master image of Umbrel. And then it has an app store of open source free software where you can install things like Nextcloud or PhotoPrism or a bunch of really nice Bitcoin data exploration tools, because as a node, it actually maintains a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain. And so you get to use some of the open source software to generate interesting analytics and charts and your own data on that. It also allows you to install things like a wallet, a web wallet. So you could create family wallets on here. You can generate reports from the blockchain. You can install Pi-hole, Home Assistant. It gives you access to all of that. And what it's doing in the background when you install these quote-unquote apps is it is deploying a container. And it's managing that container for you. So that's why you have to use their setup script and either use their Raspberry Pi image or use it on like an Ubuntu or Debian box. I tried it on a Tumbleweed system, and their script just makes too many assumptions about a Debian system and doesn't work. But once it's up and running, it's all basically Nginx and Docker.
What was impressive to me was how it was linking all of those apps.
Right, yeah.
And it knew that you were running a node, and it was pulling the information from there. So it seemed really well integrated from what we saw so far.
Yeah, everything is set up to use your own node as the source of truth for information about the Bitcoin network. And that is really nice.
And fast, too.
And they're all aware of like where its status is and stuff like that. But the other thing that's neat is there's a series of cryptocurrency wallets out there that allow you to define your own Bitcoin node too. So they'll use that for their transactions and whatnot. So it lets you deploy like a handful of really common self-hosted applications like Nextcloud with a handful of probably some of the best Bitcoin web-based management tools.
I saw Home Assistant on there.
Yep. Home Assistant's on there. Matrix is on there. Element is on there.
I don't think I saw a Bitwarden.
Bitwarden, I think, is actually on there.
Yeah.
I think it might be, yeah.
Seems like it should be.
Yeah.
So why do you think they decided to build sort of a VM deployment platform on top and then
container deployment platform?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. And also to focus on these applications instead of using something that was already out there?
Well, I think job one is to be a Bitcoin node, right? And so that's where it started. And then they realized because their environment was basically a series of containers that it would be pretty easy to just pull in these other containers. And they're just pulling in like the Home Assistant's projects. It's not like their own custom.
Fair enough. It's not that much work.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably some for the integration, but it's not a ton. And then the other thing it does is if you want, it connects to the Tor network and gives you your Tor URL So essentially, you could leave it behind a NAT, leave it behind a firewall, but still connect to it to see what's going on over Tor or over your LAN. And then they monetize the project by selling this really nice looking little all aluminum Umbrel server with a little display on the front of it. And I mean, if I had, stupid money, I'd probably want one of these, because I tell you, I decided to take a look at this just this last couple of days, and I'm very, very impressed by it. It's really a nice little package they have. So I'm sure their little server would be pretty great too. Oh, look at that too. You can get it in different colors.
Oh, nice.
That's kind of neat. How about an orange one?
I'm having a hard time. Are those are just kind of graphics, right? They're not actually devices. Like, it's not a photo; it's a graphic that they made. I can't quite.
Probably, it's hard to tell.
But now that I walk up to it, I've got some. Let's call it photo investigational work for you. You ready?
Sure.
All right. So this was taken on not a great camera, and
I am zoomed in quite a bit too.
I know, that's fine with me, but it also has some artifacts that give it away. So I will point them out for you.
Okay.
Here we go. So to the left. So I'm going to yell a bit because I don't have a microphone here, but to the left, you see where my mouse is right here? This is a piece of dust on the sensor. So they're using a DSLR. And there's another one just over here. See, it's like a smudge. They didn't even bother to take that out. Total amateurs. Another one there, another one there. So
There's also like a little dirty spot
on the actual
unit right there under the umbrella.
Yeah. So it's a dirty camera, dirty photo. But it's a real device, I think. So that's kind of cool.
I wouldn't mind one of these if I was really into the whole, like having a family wallet and all of that kind of stuff.
I'd love a banana to figure out how big that thing is.
It does need a banana
I
to
don't
scale.
know.
Sorry about the stream.
Things broke.
I guess I just...
What happened? You seem all deflated now.
I am, because you can put so much work into this kind of stuff, and then just something else breaks later. So you get one thing fixed, and then something else completely unrelated.
Isn't that the theme of the day?
And I just find it a little deflating.
Do you want to spin the wheel then?
Yeah, I think that'd make me feel better. I think a different topic.
Here we go.
Okay. Things Linux sucks at.
Okay.
Things Linux sucks at. What do you think? What do you think, Brent?
I'm tempted to say cohesion.
Sure. Yeah. Consensus. Sucks at consensus.
That's a difficult one, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's also partly its strength. If there isn't consensus, a bunch of people go out and try to solve the same problem in different ways. And in the end, I think we end up with a better solution typically. Maybe not always.
Yeah, it's a messier process.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah, definitely. I don't know, Mumble Room or Jitsi Room, anybody have a suggestion for things Linux sucks at? What does Linux suck at?
Transitions. I got the like a Wayland session. It's just
True.
It's getting there, but everything. If you compare it to say Apple and all the file system, they make a decision and it just seems to just go through basically repeating basically your comments that you've had on the whole
Right.
Apple stuff, including radio.
Like when you stop and you look at how long will it take before Mint is on Wayland and Pipewire? What's that timeline going to look like? It's going to be a while.
Do you have any predictions?
I think a couple of years minimum. Sucks at supporting fingerprint readers. That is often a problem. On my ThinkPad, I'm happy to report on my ThinkPad X1, it has been very good now. So it is getting better there. Also, you can suggest a topic for the wheel. We're getting down to the final 3 topics. So if you want to put something on there to keep the stream going, suggest it in the chat room or in the Jitsi Mumble room. Things that Linux sucks at. This drives me crazy. Multiple external monitors at different resolutions and refresh rates.
Have we not figured this out yet?
It just stinks.
Are there any distributions that are better at this than others?
No, there are window managers that are better at this. I just have to mention Enlightenment, as always.
I didn't see that coming. I didn't think you'd say that.
Nobody saw that coming. Oh man, yeah.
I just tested that one. I was at my second residence, and they have a USB 2 monitor.
Okay.
Oh,
sure.
Those are.
And then I have to connect that one. I need a little script to make it run.
Yeah.
But with GNOME 3, it doesn't run at all with Enlightenment. It just pops up as second screen, and you can configure it easily, and it remembers your configuration. It just works.
That does sound nice. I will have to eventually break down and give it a go. Things that Linux sucks at.
Video editing.
I've got one.
Okay, yeah, sure, go ahead.
Deep learning on NVIDIA cards.
Oh,
And there's-
Interesting.
I thought that was actually kind of a big area. You're just saying it's bad at it.
Well, once you get the NVIDIA card working, but then every update, it just breaks.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like it's NVIDIA that's the problem there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just
it
GPUs
just came
in
to
general.
mind, anything GPU with NVIDIA.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big point. Like, why is it so terrible at GPUs? It's kind of not our fault, maybe.
Well, here's where we get stuck a lot. I could be wrong about this, but I think a lot of times there's a bigger ecosystem that's pushing people to use these tooling, and we're just not particularly good at it. Like CUDA is an ecosystem. It is a whole frickin' thing. It's one of NVIDIA's most, I think, savage moves in the industry is really building out dependency on CUDA, because CUDA only works on NVIDIA cards. And so I think that's got to play a role, right? If you don't have first class CUDA support, then you're kind of SOL if your CUDA support is fragile. Like the Mac has no CUDA support, and so you have entire industries that just avoid buying Macs because of that. It's that kind of an ecosystem.
Well, I can say something to that. I mean, I'm a software developer, and I've implemented CUDA numerous times. The CUDA libraries per se on Linux work first class with any programming language I've used. It's just the driver support and NVIDIA's policy on pushing updates, which just break everything.
That is frustrating, isn't it? I just set up my son's laptop on Fedora over the weekend and then did an update, and it broke his NVIDIA driver, and he had to leave, and I just didn't get it working before he had to go. And so he has a nice Ryzen integrated GPU, so he's fine, but it's frustrating because it was working and then it broke there at the end, and I ran out of time to fix it. And I don't know, and it's particularly rough on Fedora because historically their NVIDIA GPU support's been bad. And so as a result, there's 50 different ways and 1,000 different guides on how you should install the NVIDIA driver, and they're all very version specific. So, and it's different with the later versions than it is the older versions, but there's so much momentum on that stuff. So that's maybe an area that Linux sucks at and that's something the Linus Tech Tips videos touched on too, is like there's thousands of guides out there, and most of them are no longer applicable, but they're still relevant in Google search. And then there's also just like tons of blogs and like distro rundowns and shootouts that are just nonsensical and totally not based in reality. And that's a problem too.
I have another one. Monetization.
Yep. That's definitely an issue, which leads to developer burnout. It leads to people having to get other work, and it leads to our best talent getting basically sucked into large corporations that can pay people. And then it's corporate controlled and centralized.
Not to mention how precarious it is to have these projects be on the brink of failure, financial failure, and they're propping everything else up.
Well, and think about how stressful that is on a person over 5, 10, 15 years to live that long in a financially precarious position, feeling like you have this community to support and people using your software and a responsibility to that, plus your name, but also at the same time, not getting enough to actually financially thrive and just to have to kind of barely get by. It can be rough on a person. And we don't have a solution for that, and it keeps biting us in the ass in sometimes really large ways like log4j, and sometimes in really small ways that we don't even really realize. It just sort of gets priced into the desktop.
Feels like every 6 months we see the same story come up just with a different project.
And Minimac, of course, there's a classic area where Linux is weaker at.
Yeah, that's my general approach. So if people switch to Linux, the first thing they see is that they are missing apps. They have to adapt their workflow because they can't do things like they're used to do it. But after time, it becomes a strong part of Linux because you can adapt your workflow exactly the way you want to do it. Because on the Windows, normally you just have some apps and you combine these apps for your workflow, and then really working over your workflow and adapting it to Linux becomes a strong part in the end. And then often you're faster and you're getting used to it, and you don't want to go back.
Right.
But it takes some time. You really have to dig into it for the first month, and then you start smiling and you never stop smiling, right?
It's true.
I wouldn't say that's necessarily a downside to the Linux ecosystem itself, because let's say you reverse things and you were on Linux and you got a new job and you had to move to Windows, which has happened to me. It's just as I would argue it's more painful to try to find the things you need in that ecosystem.
Yeah, I was going to say that because I started using Windows for work after 10 years.
I'm sorry.
I started using Windows for work after 10 years, and it's really hard on me. And I mean, you really need to work yourselves again.
We need like a Windows support group.
The dangerous thing about Windows is it like I have to really reinforce this with Dylan when he ever goes into the Windows side of his install. It's like, you really need to be careful what you're downloading, because he goes to download stuff from Minecraft, and 3 out of the 4 links are scams.
Right.
It's a landmine everywhere.
I forgot about that.
That's bad. So, anyways, moving on. Now that we've come a complete circle and gotten back to what Linux is good at, let's spin the wheel again. I added a last-minute topic.
Did you really?
Yeah. I hope this is the last one, but we'll see. It's why Linux will win at all at the end, 20 years down the road.
Well, okay. When that comes up, I'll get right into it.
Yeah. All right. So, are we ready to spin it again?
I feel ready.
Okay, here we go.
I want to mention one thing.
Sure.
One overarching theme is that Linux just sucks at running proprietary software in general.
Yeah.
Because you were complaining about people not being able to use certain applications, or the NVIDIA proprietary driver is terrible. That kind of seemed to be the overarching theme, is Linux isn't great at running proprietary software.
It's true.
But that's not always true. Like Reaper's running just fine.
Yeah, some userland stuff. It's better in the userland. The deeper into the stack it goes,
fair enough,
the more trouble it causes. All right, here we go. Oh, I'm going to spin it again. I want to save that one for the end. I want to end on a happy note. I'm stacking the deck. Here we go. Come on, keep it going. Uh-oh. EndlessOS.
You're looking at me like, why did we add this?
No. I mean, I'm sure people have written in and asked, right?
Well, yes. And also it inspired me last time when we were talking Flatpaks. And just to hear, was it William? Was his name? I forget now. But he was running, he's the the head software guy at Endless. Do you remember we had an interview with him and he was saying, I'm running 174.
Yep.
I read a lot about Endless, but maybe 4 years ago. And it sounds like they've done some interesting technological choices to help them achieve their goals. And it just got me interested. I didn't expect them to be so front of the technology stack, maybe is the way to put it. But it sounds like it's really working for them. So I just got really curious into how far they've come in some of what they're trying to do. And I've known some people who've worked there, and I've said some really nice things. So I thought, hey, let's dig in.
I know I've noticed in the GNOME and GTK commits that there's almost always several Endless staff, 1 or 2 Endless members.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. They're pretty active contributors.
Nice.
They seem to be getting fairly well with GNOME developers.
That's an achievement.
Yep. And I've never really gone more than 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes with it. When they first came along, they were first very hardware focused.
Okay.
And now they've kind of pivoted to the software, and I think that's a good idea. When I first interviewed them, they were actually really kind of pitching at schools and prisons.
I remember that.
Yeah. But I kind of feel like now that they've had this new focus for about a year, it's probably time for a revisit. But what I can't suss out is if there's interest in the audience or not. I can't tell.
I'm not sure it's focused on us
Right.
as an audience. And though I wondered, could it be focused on some of our children, for instance?
So I recommended to my co-host on Coder Radio, Mike, that he was looking for a Linux OS for his kid. And I said, well, if you're not going to go with the desktop OS that you use, which is Pop, then I think maybe you should consider Endless. I'd say my first choice would be go deploy whatever OS you're comfortable using and use the most often. And then my second would be something like Endless or another OS that's really kind of curated like this. So I think it's another one, like along with Qubes, we should really give it a go. And report back.
I'm remembering now when I was looking up brunch guests that they. Now I don't want to get this too wrong, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Maybe someone can have a look. I remember that there was a project that was focused on sharing coding experiences with kids, sometimes even toddlers. And it was connected to Endless. And,
sure, yeah, there's a bunch of tools it ships with like that.
Yeah, I would imagine there's a nice partnership there, and that makes a lot of sense because like one of the first images they have on their website is a bunch of kids looking at a laptop.
Right.
So that sort of makes sense to me.
Look at their download images here. Desktop computer, virtual machine, Raspberry Pi, Pinebook Pro.
That's what I mean. It seems like they're
I'd love
really
to try it.
tied into what's going on.
There's a Pinebook Pro behind you we could put it on.
Oh, hello.
We should try it. We should try it on the Pinebook Pro.
All right.
It needs a good job. Pinebook Pro is almost in that sweet spot for me, but not quite, Any other thoughts on Endless from anybody in the virtual lugs before we go?
One thing that might not make it great for children is that computing is really social for them.
That's true. I mean, you could put it on the internet, right? You could get it. You're thinking like applications or games? What are your
applications and games? Like I moved in with my significant other who has 2 kids. I'm like, oh, I'll switch the kids to Linux. And then I realized all they do is play games that run terribly on Linux.
Yeah. And of course, like Microsoft's a big part of that. I mean, they like Bedrock is so there was a way to get it running on Linux, but the maintainer of the Flatpak for Bedrock Edition just bailed, just noped out. So that's gone now. And they pulled it from FlatHub. What is it?
Well, I'm just browsing their website here while you're talking, and I found some cool stuff.
What is it?
You closed the website.
Oh, I did. I was going to move on.
They also have this experiment that is exactly what I was talking about called the hack computer. And it's both building the hardware and the software. So they have, it sounds like what they call an endless key. Hack is included within the new Endless Key USB project. Offline kids can plug in the key and they're ready to play Hack. So Hack, I think, is like a gamified version of learning.
Is this what you're talking about?
I think it might be.
So Hack is included as in the Endless Key product. The complete Hack experience now comes on the new Endless Key USB. So offline kids can plug in and they're ready to play Hack.
Like there's hack-computer or try-hack computer.
That's where I'm at. I'm right now at hack-computer.com. Huh. What is Hack?
Go to try.hack-computer.com.
Try. Okay, what now?
Try. Dot.
Okay.
And then just the URL you're at.
Try dot. So there's instead of www.
Yeah.
Try.hack-computer.
Yeah,
what?
Yeah.
Then what? Just
then
that?
Then just nothing.
Oh, okay. Of course. And survey says load. Oh, there it goes. What are these NFTs?
How'd you know?
What am I looking at?
I don't know. It says like pick a dimension to explore, and so just I don't know.
Sure looks like
you got processing, sidetrack, web tech, engineering, EndlessOS.
I'm gonna pick
terminal.
I'm gonna pick EndlessOS. Who we got there? Who is that? Who's coming in?
Is
right
that
now?
Nancy?
It might have been Hack Computer. This is too much, man. I'm already bored.
All right. Well, it's not targeted at you, clearly. Oh, I see. Switched.
Hack Laptop, the laptop that allows kids ages 10 plus to learn to code by hacking their own device. a high-performance, award-winning laptop. The hack utilizes a 14-inch Asus E4060MA laptop to deliver the world's only completely hackable computer. Note that this computer must be purchased through the hack to access the hack experience.
Okay, this is more disappointing than I thought. It's just a bunch of links to a bunch of projects.
Yeah.
So...
They make it look good, though, right?
Well, they had me. They definitely had me.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they got a good look going. I think they're worth taking more seriously or spending more time with.
Yeah, I agree.
I just haven't got a good, strong sense of the audience's interest, but maybe they'll let us know. Any other EndlessOS thoughts before we spin the wheel?
Well, the endless key, that is just a USB drive that you can plug in any computer.
That's sort of look like.
Yeah.
So,
And play hack. All right. Okay. All right.
endlessos.org/key.
I mean, it's a 128 gig USB drive, and there's something there.
Hey, maybe it's high quality, and it's branded.
It says high quality in the description. How'd you know?
Well, I had a sense, man. I had a sense. All right. Just a few more topics on the wheel of topics today, and then our stream's going to be over.
So what are the options before you turn it?
Brent's Docker, JellyFin beginnings.
Oh, here we go.
Cloud virtual desktops, and why Linux will win it all in 20 years. You ready?
This is going to be fun.
Spinning. I wanted to save that one, but we'll just do it now because there's just no avoiding it. There's no avoiding it. Why Linux will win it all. You know, this just proves that you can't control the wheel.
I think the wheel's rigged.
You can't control the wheel. All right, so why Linux will win it all in 20 years? What do you think? What is it about Linux that means it's going to make it so it'll win it all in 20 years? What is it?
Okay, well, I see
But
it.
it's also stubborn. We won't change. It will always exist.
There's that, right? There's no commercial interest. It's going to be like, well, we didn't make enough in the Linux division this year. That's never going to happen.
So when all the economies crash, it'll still be around. That's what you're saying.
I've always felt like over time, companies will focus on something else. Their attention will be diverted, and like things like Windows and Mac OS will be around for a while, but not forever. These companies will eventually do something else. Like Nintendo used to be a trading card company 100 years ago, right? And Linux will be here when those companies decide they're leaving the market, and it'll just be better than ever whenever that happens. I think it's sort of like how in the very early days, in the late 70s, in the early 80s, they already had TCP/IP figured out. It was already known, but you still had IPX, you had NetBEUI, you had AppleTalk, you had all these other standards and protocols that came out that were not TCP/IP. They were corporate owned, and they survived for a while. Like there were a many IPX networks and a lot of AppleTalk networks and some NetBEUI networks, unfortunately. And the reality is TCP/IP ate it all. Eventually, those vendors had other strategies. They wanted to participate in the internet. Their corporate strategies changed, and all of a sudden they needed networking protocols that could route, that could go out to the public internet. And so they transitioned from having their interest in these proprietary protocols to using the open standard that is TCP/IP. And I think that same kind of it just makes business sense kind of thinking will eventually cause Linux to consume everything. It is the Borg. Resistance is futile. You can delay it, but it will come for you.
I love that.
That's my thoughts.
It feels like we're on a trajectory, and you can kind of see it trending quite heavily in some areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, if you're going to predict what's going to happen in the next 20 years, you kind of got to look at what's happened in the last 20 years.
Sure.
So I know on the server side of things, it's gone fairly well, but like 20 years in the desktop space, a heck of a lot has changed.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of as markets change, Linux gets used in a spot where it wasn't used previously. So if you look at the world before Android, it was all kinds of different OSs and real-time OSs and attempts at that. And there was all kinds of different solutions for that, some made by the chip makers themselves, some that were made by community, some that were made by that hardware manufacturer and just used specifically on their own devices. And then there's the post-Android world and TiVo world, where you just start with your device using Linux. That's the base operating system, because when you use Linux, the kernel, you're also going to get networking. You're going to get device driver support. You're going to get hardware platform support, SoC support. You're going to get all these things now that it takes to run a tech stack that you would have to implement yourself, that it just becomes a literal impossibility. So you just use Linux now and you build on top of that. And that wasn't true 11 years ago, and now it's a universal truth. And I think that is what will happen in other markets and other areas, just as it is that same exact thing as what happened on the server. When I started in the industry, Linux was looked at as a risk. It was considered an IP risk. The people that built Linux were freeloaders, hippies that likely weren't going to stick around with anything. These distros were fly-by-nights that could disappear on you at any moment. You would be silly to deploy anything but something like Windows or Solaris. And it was considered an amateur thing that you would never use on a server. Now it's the de facto server operating system around the world, so much so that even companies like Microsoft and Apple deploy it themselves in their own servers. So it just shows you how things can change over time. And I imagine the desktop, the reason why it hasn't conquered the desktop is because the market doesn't need it to right now. The business interests don't need it to. Like, it's not until businesses acting in their own self-interest align with using Linux. Like, look what happened with Microsoft and their adoption of open source. It was Linux is a cancer until all of a sudden they realized, well, hold on. We want to be big in the cloud and we want to be big with developers. Now we love Linux. Now look at all this stuff we're open sourcing. Now our terminal's open source. Now we're doing this in open source. Look at our subsystem, right? It's like it wasn't an ideological shift. It was a business shift that caused the adoption.
Yeah, we've talked some in the past, and even I think in predictions a few years ago about Windows running Linux under the hood, and that feels to me like it is a real possibility and could make business sense for them in some ways.
Especially if it was basically a thin client platform that connected you to a cloud desktop.
Sure.
That they run on Azure.
Sure.
And they charge your business $5 a month for you to get access to it, or $10 a month.
That'd be an interesting place for them to actually test that without needing to drop Windows right away, actually.
All right. Does anybody else have a reason why Linux will win it all in 20 years?
The switch to services revenue. So you can't make money selling an operating system anymore. So why would you spend all the man hours to maintain it? So if Windows could make that compatibility layer, why wouldn't they just maintain or help maintain Linux rather than have to maintain the 30 years of technical debt that is Microsoft Windows?
Flip that around for a moment. Imagine that Apple or Microsoft hasn't invested 35 years in a desktop platform, and they were launching as a business today, and they wanted to get into Azure or iCloud or services. Apple wanted to be a TV company and a phone company. Would they even fucking bother?
No, that was crazy.
It'd be crazy, right?
Yeah, the only reason you would actually, you might roll your own kind of distro because you need some things that it doesn't provide, but
you would end up with a lot more things like Amazon Linux.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Minimac, you think maybe it won't actually make it to the 20-year milestone, it sounds like?
Well, the question is, will there be Linux in 20 years? Will there be a successor like a running herd kernel? So I think Linux already won in the regard that the new system and open source and projects around that have Linux opened the way to these, and these will survive. But maybe we will have another kernel, a different kernel, just a different base, and we will open source and Linux using open source has changed the world. Now, I can live with another kernel base, but the open source environment, the new system, everything like that, that's the most important thing. And that's what I depend on, and that will survive, I think. And so I say Linux has already won in some regard.
Nice.
It's true. It's now we just got to sit back and watch it all happen. All right, 2 more topics on the wheel. You ready, Brent? Should we spin it?
I think I'm ready. Go for it. What sounds different?
Oh.
Okay, you touched on this just briefly here with Microsoft.
I did. This is kind of perfect, isn't it? So cloud virtual desktops. Are they actually useful?
That's the real question. So I got kind of curious about this maybe a month ago. If you remember, there was a slight period of time there where my internet was just total crap.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten slightly better, and I don't know why, and I'm fine with that.
The moon,
right?
That's what I blame it on.
It's tides or something.
Yeah, how did that work? How do they work?
And so I know this on the surface may sound like a non-solution for me because, like, if you have bad internet, a cloud-hosted desktop doesn't make any sense. But I have some competing priorities here because for me, I don't really have any super performant computers that I'm willing to use on a daily basis. I have a few laptops that I've bought. Probably the newest one is an X250. But it's kind of loud. I don't like that. And so
it's not necessarily the best time to pick up new hardware either.
No, definitely. Yeah. And so I got really curious about offloading hardware expenses onto, this is basically a subscription hardware service, really, if you look at it that way. Mm-hmm. But I wondered, I saw a few other resources talking about, oh yeah, this is great. Like you can totally do this. It's good for people who don't have that much money to put on hardware, et cetera, et cetera. But I just wondered, is this more of a toy and not something people can actually use? You know, someone like me, like maybe corporate stuff, it makes a lot of sense because they can orchestrate this in a really seamless way. But for someone like me who just sort of wants to get some things done, does it make any sense?
Right. Yeah. And
because there are some clear advantages. One of them is price, I think.
Well, and the other thing that's always lovely about them is they're generally in a data center, so they have just like a screaming internet connection.
Well, okay, fair enough. That's why it got interesting to me in the first place. It was like maybe I could just download or upload, my Flax from there and
blast it.
Have them. Yeah. Then you would never complain to me about my drop connections and such.
But see, that's where they're also very weak is I think the number one issue is latency in the remote screen updates. They've gotten it really good, but it's still not the same.
Yeah.
And especially when you're looking at like a waveform that's scrolling across the screen, that's an area where it's going to be particularly bad at.
Or your mouse. I know you're sensitive with your mouse.
Sure. But then the other thing is like very few of them are going to come back and like take a local USB device and bring it forward to a cloud connection. Some of them will, but those are the nicer, more expensive ones. Generally, they're using Windows.
But that seems essential to me. Like, if you couldn't plug in a keyboard or like, okay, maybe a keyboard's a bad example, but something like an audio device, like, maybe it's just our audience. I think we try a lot of things that most users don't, but that's also the only demographic I could see who's been willing to try this.
I feel like it's getting worked out now. I think in a way, like these cloud gaming services are doing us a solid in that they're sorting out how do I bring a USB input device forward in a low latency way, and how do I get this really high performant application down to them as fast as possible with the lowest latency. And if I could use the NVIDIA GeForce streaming service just to get a desktop, I probably would. So, they're legitimately on the GeForce Now streaming service. They're spinning up Windows VMs, loading Steam with or they have a Windows VM image with Steam pre-installed. But sometimes there's updates that need to be applied. Then you log into your Steam account. It brings you in. You log into Steam, and then it downloads the frickin' game in their data center.
Nice.
Installs it on that VM they've just created, and then launches the game.
So you can see how there are clearly some advantages, and it's very tempting. But then there are these subtle roadblocks that I think we need to get over before that's even useful.
I wish they would sell you a desktop service. They've built it for gaming, but they clearly could deliver a desktop experience because you're often in a desktop experience until the game launches. And I'd love, we wanted to figure out a way to run OBS in the cloud.
Yeah, right.
So we all just connect into that. I thought that'd be really great. All right, I see we have a few takes in there. Minimac, I wanted to let you jump in first, and then we'll get to Rob and then Gerald. So go ahead, Minimac.
Yeah, I think I don't have anything to add. You just nailed it.
Okay.
I mean, I mentioned cloud gaming. I think this is the step. If you have cloud gaming, you can have a virtual desktop and everything, and just have an application on your system that loads in that cloud instance, and then you can use your computer in a cloud.
Yeah, that would be great. Gerald, did you want to jump in on development?
Yeah.
Collaborative development in the cloud. That's a good idea.
Yeah, thanks. So I lead a software development team at the company, and so for onboarding new developers, it always takes like ages till they have their IDE stuff set up and so on.
Sure.
So I was really like thinking like if we could have if we could just say, okay, we do our business in our own cloud, right? So here's our standardized desktop. Here's you work on a thin client thing, and your IDE is in the desktop, and it's already auto-configured. Anything, the build system is auto-configured.
Right.
That would be like great. Like I looked into something like I don't know, you mentioned it once on last guacamole.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tested that, and
that's exactly pretty much what I work. I was part of the sort of like DevOps team to build it. Because of a bunch of requirements and networking issues that we can't install stuff on our own laptops. We have base images in AWS that basically spin up a full dev environment, bit of guacamole magic. So you thin client in, and we can get a developer up and running within an hour, generally. And everything's set up for them, VS Code with all the plugins that we require, browsers with all the accessibility plugins that we need to do accessibility testing. There's quite a lot, otherwise it would have taken each developer days to set up the various Docker configuration stuff that's needed.
Sure.
Because it's all microservices. The fact we can just do it in base images, use Guacamole as a thin client. It has its issues. It's not the most performant. I would love it to get more performant, but it's better than nothing or some crazy 3-hop process of RDP connections, which is just insane.
Well, it sounds like this is solving an actual problem. I was just trying to dream up problems that this could solve, but this is one.
You bet it's a problem. Thanks for your input.
All right, we got one left on the wheel. Should we do it? I mean,
you got to spin it though, right?
Yeah, I'll spin it.
Okay.
I mean, it's only one topic, so we know where it's going to land.
It's not going to make any sound, I don't think, because there's no divider.
Well, let's find out.
Oh, beep, 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 beep,
It doesn't.
beep,
You're right.
beep,
It's
beep,
they actually wrote that in.
Beep, beep.
Nicely done. Boop. All right, our last topic on the wheel is Brent's Docker JellyFin beginnings. JellyFin beginnings, huh, Brent?
Well, here we go.
And now the wheel is empty, so this is our last topic. So you're jumping into JellyFin.
Well, I would more say I've jumped.
Oh.
And so a few weeks ago, if you all remember, we did a JellyFin kind of dive, a little bit of dive, revisit,
yep.
and it had, I don't know.
We all walked away fairly impressed.
I know. Even Alex was like, oh, he tried to convince Kat to, it didn't go so well.
No.
Anyways. And so I got inspired by that. You let me kind of tap into the JellyFin server you had here in the studio, which was fun. But then I thought, So I've never set up Plex. I've played with Kodi a little bit over the years, but I've never been organized enough to bring all my media into one place and to have it hosted even locally in that way. But
so
I thought,
what are you running it on?
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting. And I thought you'd like this adventure.
All right.
So what has also happened was that over the last few years, I've been lucky enough to find a great many ThinkPads at the local landfill where I was living.
So you've adopted some ThinkPads. You have a few stray ThinkPads.
Well, I have some that I've used for years that are really beloved to me and that I just have upgraded. And now I'm like, well, what the heck do I do with this thing? So what I have, my trajectory is, so I've got my parents who live in a different city. I've got my brother who lives on the same property as me, but in a different building, right? And I've got my place, which has pretty bad internet. So what I'm doing is I'm building 3 systems that are pretty similar, okay? Building 3 systems using old laptops. So one of them is a T61, which is very ancient. The other one's an X440 where the screen's broken. And the one I'm using is an X220 with a dock. So lots of USB inputs.
And do they all need storage? Do they all have same?
The idea is that, for instance,
airplanes.
I know that's a loud one.
Yeah.
Don't they know what we're doing?
Come
here?
on, gosh, I mean, we're down here podcasting.
I know. We didn't even tell them the schedule changed, and they're just. So the idea is most of these people have USB drives, that they've collected over the years,
Sure.
a whole bunch of different sizes, different ones, and most of them are USB compatible. Hardly any internal drives. I've got probably the most out of all of these people. But I wanted to implement a solution that I could test on my own and distribute to my parents and my brother, for instance, or anybody else who wants to, in a fairly straightforward way that, whatever's running at my place is so similar over there that I don't need to relearn like the topography and all of that topology. So the question is this crazy? To plug in a whole bunch of USB drives into like a quasi laptop Franken server and to have it do some cool things?
I guess it depends on your tolerance for outages.
I think it's high.
Okay.
Because...
Well, then no. I say it's not crazy. If I could wave a magic wand and do it one way only, it would be to probably like lay down Ethernet or something between you and your brother's place, and then have all of it, at least in the case of those two, have all of it pooled in one spot, so you have one large set of disks and only one system to manage instead of two.
Yeah, I hear you. Currently, the connection between us is he's got just a home router at his place that controls also the internet coming in. And I think it's a Ubiquiti, like very directional Wi-Fi that is pointed at my cabin. And it's pretty slow and unreliable, I'll say. So yeah, Ethernet somehow would be nice, but that requires a 100-foot ditch.
I mean, really, you both are going to want... Yeah, I mean, if it's that kind of connection, you're probably going to want them on your ends. So that way you don't have buffering and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, now that it's not crazy, it would be nice to have a way to manage all of it centrally. That's where things like... It's where it'd be nice to have a good skill set in Ansible, but it's...
Which I'm willing to learn. So this is also...
It's a lot... That's like saying... That's like saying you got to learn like a whole other category before you can start even doing something in another category. It's a big dependency. Not necessarily a bad one, but...
So that's the background. That's the hardware.
Okay.
And so the idea over Christmas, I thought, was, well, I'm just going to jump into JellyFin. And I know my brother and his wife, they watch a ton of TV. They got a giant pile of DVDs that they love and never watch, right? You know how that is. And because of the bad internet to that place sometimes, streaming services just... Are
not really great.
No, that's it.
Right.
Like 80% of the time it's fine.
Yeah.
But there's sometimes it's not. So I also took it as an opportunity to jump into Docker, which I had never done. And I heard, a few people in our chat room over the last several episodes have said that they haven't dove in either. And so I thought, well, JellyFin's actually a nice... low stakes way to try stuff, right?
That's a good way to start.
And I didn't quite figure out Docker Compose yet, so maybe you'll have to give me a once over.
Sure.
But it was fun. I had so much fun. And I have to say, it worked really well. And so now JellyFin's up and running.
Nice.
Which is very cool.
Oh, good.
Mostly at my brother's place because, I don't know, we watch most of the content over there.
I say, the nice thing about doing it in Docker Compose is that when you revisit it in 3 months to a year, you have this readable file that tells you, oh, this is where I store the config at, this is where the application data is at, and these are the networking ports it uses. It's just, it's a really readable YAML. It's really a readable format. It's just also very anal about how you format it.
Yeah. Well, I'm using, I guess it's called the Docker command line. And so you're just running a script, and it looks almost as readable to me as all the same options, just slightly different formatting from what I can tell. I mean, it's a simple application, and I'm not doing anything fancy with it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, that could be really nice too. So I think we're when you're talking just one application, I don't think it really matters.
Okay.
Like if you have a stack of applications, like maybe JellyFin and a Usenet or torrent downloader or a audiobook manager or something like something I like a lot is I haven't used it. What is it called? I haven't used the fork of it, but the project was called Subsonic. But there's several forks of it now, and it's essentially like a self-hosted music library, media library, where you can have your music and your playlists and podcasts and internet radio streams and stuff like that, and everybody can have their own on there. And so it's kind of nice when you've got, just a small LAN and people want to have a centralized jukebox, stuff like that. When you start having multiple applications, it's nice to manage all that in a compose file, because it acts as both documentation, but also it's a method to update them and stop them and start them.
Got it.
All that kind of stuff. So it's nice in that way. So like in my case, all of my server-side applications that are related to multimedia in some way are all in their own Docker Compose file. And so I go into that directory, and if I do a Docker Compose pull, it actually ends up updating like 8 applications for me.
Nice.
With one command.
Nice.
And they all stay up to date, and that way and I can separate it out like that. So I think it's handy in that regard. It's also a really nice way to share your setup with people, or communicate to someone else what your setup is. So, if you were to show me your Docker Compose file, I'd pretty much understand exactly how you have it set up, even if I never saw the command you used to launch it. So that kind of thing.
So one of the questions I guess I have 2 questions. One of them is, what should I run next? And the other question is Docker the thing to be learning right now, or do we have other technologies that maybe...
Yeah, I think so. No, I think Docker's probably the most prominent. I mean, there's Podman, but you look at like this Bitcoin node thing I was doing. The entire thing is written assuming you're using Docker.
Yeah, that seems like the case, isn't it?
Yeah. Minimac has a JellyFin solution. Tell us about it.
Well, I'm working on that solution.
Oh, yeah.
As some of you know, I have a second residence, and I have an Android TV there, and I was looking for solutions to have access to all my library via JellyFin on that Android TV. But all of a sudden I thought to myself, maybe I don't want all the other people visiting that second residence having access to all my library. So my solution would be Chromecast. So having a JellyFin instance on my phone and just Chromecast my library to the TV. So I can take my phone whenever I go. I can go to a friend. If he has an Android capable Chromecast capable device, I can just stream my library to their TV, and they're very good. So I have everything I want, and I can decide if people have access to the library or not.
That would be great for hotel rooms. I had to stay in a hotel room on my way here, and I quickly got reminded how awful cable TV is.
Oh boy, it's so bad. Yeah, that's actually why I own an Amazon Fire Stick, because the Amazon Fire Stick is one of the few portable set-top TV boxes that A, you can install a Plex or JellyFin app on, and B, supports Wi-Fi hotel captures.
Very nice.
You got to have a device that will bring up like an embedded Firefox.
Yeah, of course.
And most of the TV set-top box things do not. Huh. Yeah. Pi Crash, you had a note on Libre Speed. That could be a great app for Brent to try out. You're right.
Yes, so if you got LibreSpeed, you could actually test your connection between your house and your brother's house, and now the connection is failing between myself and my brother's house, or the connection is failing with the internet with fast.com or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That does sound like a great idea. I've always wanted a little bit of a history to see what the bottleneck is or who I can yell at next.
And there is I believe, a Linux server image, so it's really easy to get up and going. No flash required, just a lightweight speed test in JavaScript.
This is the first time I hear about this.
Well, we've mentioned it on self-hosted.
Right. I should pay more attention.
It has come up, but it's probably just been a quick mention. It's a simple app, I think, but I do think that's a great one for you to try.
Nice. I'm writing that down.
Libre Speed. And it's another one of those nice standalone applications, it's good to... So when you go look at, say like at Linux Server IO and you look at their Docker Hub pages, they'll have the Docker Compose file there that they recommend. If you read through it, you'll see like, oh, I just changed this to my time zone. I changed this to my paths. And then it's just a matter of you make a file called docker-compose.yml, and it needs to be formatted exactly like they'll have it on the Linux server page. And then you can just do Docker Compose up, and it'll start up the container for you.
Well, that's what I So I did explore this,
Mhm.
and I tried getting that up and running and making sure everything was cool. But I actually had a hard time getting the Docker Compose command to even work. There were some dependencies or something going on.
Okay,
that,
so
or
it may not have been
permissions or
installed.
something.
Yeah, it doesn't install with the standard Docker packages.
Yeah, which I realized.
It's just so dumb. It will in the future. That is a thing that's changing.
How is that not a thing yet?
They hadn't decided to make it part of the official Docker command line tools, but they have now. So now it's going to be Docker space compose instead of Docker dash compose. So you may also be hit by that transition depending on when it lands in your distro.
Perhaps. I'll look more into it, but I don't know. It seemed like it should have been a little bit easier considering how useful it is.
Well, I'm so glad you got it going.
Well, yeah. It's a whole adventure.
Yeah, it is. We could work on it some more while we're here. I'm deploying apps right now on our new server. Well, that's Podman. Whoop, whoop.
And how's that going?
Slow, but good.
Right.
Slow. Not great, but good. All right. Well, Mumble Room, it's time for me to go eat. It is that time. Thank you for joining us, though. Both virtual lugs. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, it was cool hearing the conversation go between both of them. That was really fun.
Thanks for joining us for Linux Sunday on a Tuesday. We'll see you on Sunday, and we'll see you again next Tuesday, too. That's how we do it. Thank you.
Yep.
Come back right here, either Mumble Room or Jitsi. We had them both running today. Worked out pretty good.
Yeah, great hearing some familiar voices.
Yep. Goodbye, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye, Chris.
Bye now.
Bye.
Cheerio.
Goodbye.
Bye. See you.
Bye.
Goodbye. 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 Also, thank you for all of you watching live, those in the chat room. Have a great rest of your day. See you next Sunday.